When you get in your car, do you feel like you're invincible? Most people would say yes. But do you ever wonder what goes in, like what technologies and what innovations go into your car to make it so that you feel invincible? To put it simply, most of it comes down to testing the limits of cars on the racetrack and pushing the limits of safety and then fixing it based on what accidents happen out on the track. So, today we're going to be talking about three of the biggest safety innovations that we have seen in recent memory and how it has evolved over time with the safety of motorsports, how it used to be back in the day, and how it all translates out onto the track. I myself have been watching motorsport for more than 10 years now, and after watching for that long, you pick up a thing or two about every single aspect that has to do with the sport, and that includes the safety aspect. And along with this, I've researched my topics to make sure I have everything right and to make sure everything is correct. And you might think that I'm not a fan of motorsport, why does this matter to me? But every single thing that has gone into motorsport safety has in one way or another transformed on the way over into car road safety. So really it's relevant to all of us. So more specifically today, we're going to be talking about three of the biggest safety innovations in recent years. One that protects the neck, one that cushions a blow to a wall, and one that helps keep your head protected that isn't a helmet. First off, one of the most common accidents that happens when a car suddenly decelerates are injuries to the neck. Road cars have things like airbags and headrests to keep this from happening to some extent, but in racing this would be considered a safety hazard because of its more likely ability to catch on fire and so on. So they had to come up with something different. So let's get into that now. Here we have the head and neck support device. Basically what it does is that it restrains your head and your neck, and it's otherwise known as the Hans device. And basically when you come to a sudden stop, it helps to keep your head and neck as still as possible to help avoid injuries to the neck. Now, the Hans device has actually been around for quite some time, but it was never actually made mandatory until a couple decades ago, and this was due to the tragic death of Dale Earnhardt Sr. on the final lap of the 2001 Daytona 500. He never chose to wear a Hans device as he felt it was too restrictive for his head and his neck to be able to look around. So he chose to not wear it, but on this particular race, chose out to be a wrong choice for him.
Launch to the fourth turn wall. Climb from the wreckage.
While the Hans device was merely made mandatory after the death of Dale Earnhardt Sr., there was actually a brand new safety innovation that came along with his passing. And this would be known as the Steel and Foam Energy Reduction Barrier, otherwise known as the safer barrier. Basically what it does is it disperses the energy that goes into a wall and a driver and a car whenever it makes contact with the wall at high speeds. It disperses more of energy into the wall than it does the driver as it squishes. And you know, actually, Michael McDowell has helped out quite a lot. Oh wait, never mind. In the 1940s and 50s, way back before a safety barrier had been made, there's actually very few things to help protect the drivers and the fans from each other and their own cars. It ranged from nothing to maybe some hay bales every few feet to maybe some light guardrails like you might see in the highway. But actually, since safety barrier has been introduced, it has helped out a lot. Just like with Michael McDowell in 2008, flipped his car after hitting the wall in 2008 qualifying Texas Motor Speedway. As you can see, the safer barrier actually absorbed a lot of that energy as it crumples to disperse the energy away from the driver, which massively helped him in being unharmed in that accident, miraculously. Now, for sports like Formula One and IndyCar, there has for a very long time been an issue with head protection, but they never actually made any real gains with this because not that many people had actually died in a long time. But after the death of Jules Bianchi at the 2014 Japanese Grand Prix, where he lost control in the wet under a safety car and hit a safety vehicle, they decided that they finally needed to get into protection beyond the helmet with the head. And this brings in our halo used in Formula One and our aero screen used in IndyCar. These two safety devices are basically trying to accomplish the same two things, but they just had different ways of doing it. In F1, they have circuit racing, which is left and right turns, and there's usually no or little to no banking, so it's relatively flat. And what the halo does is it helps to deflect large pieces of debris, like tires or pieces of metal or carbon fiber. Meanwhile, on the other hand, IndyCar, they actually have this curvature bulletproof glass that helps deflect from large and small pieces of debris. But they actually don't use the same devices because in IndyCar, if they used the halo, they would not be able to see what's above them on the banking, as they also race on ovals, which is left turns, and it kind of goes like this. So if you have something in your way, you're not going to be able to see what's up there. So they had to go the path of the aero screen. Meanwhile, in F1, during the early stages of their testing of the aero screen, they saw that it was actually making the drivers very nauseous, so they actually abandoned that. But so far, the halo has proved to be very, very effective in deflecting large pieces of debris, like seen in the 2018 Belgian Grand Prix, where a tire was deflected from a driver's head thanks to the halo at the start of the race.
And away we go here. It's Hamilton gets away well. Perez as well, covering his teammate. Hamilton moves over the cover of Sebastian Vettel, and it's looking over the back. Fernando Alonso goes over the top there, and Charles Leclerc Sauer also involved. Nico Hulkenberg in the Renault. He got hit from behind by Hulkenberg, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He gets a thump now and spun around and cleared. Look at this mess that's made of the side of that McLaren. So what we're about to see is Hulkenberg get too deep on the brakes.
So as you can see, it was fairly helpful. So today we have talked about three of the biggest safety innovations that have come in sports in recent years. We have talked about the Hans device, the safer barrier, and the halo and the aero screen, last but not least. So we've also talked about just how big of an effect all these safety innovations have had since they've been introduced, what came along to make it so they needed to work towards developing these safety innovations, as well as what it used to be like and how far it has come since then. So next time you get into your car to go wherever you're going to go, maybe be a little more grateful that the speed limit is usually 45 instead of 200 miles per hour. Because unlike race car, if you wreck your road car at that speed, you're not going to be in for a very good time.